Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked? Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being in class with us today. We broadcast Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. through 11 a.m. Central Time. And if you'd like to call us, we'll pay for the call. 866-582-9933. 866-582-9933. Telephone listen line, 605-477-3249. Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us. Welcome, Rick.
Good morning, Vincent. Thanks for having me.
Good morning.
I look forward.
Guineith.
Go ahead. Yeah,
Guineith Isaacs just called in, and we just lost her. I was going to put her on, but you look forward to what?
I look forward to this every Thursday morning. I'm wiping the sleep.
Waking up early.
Oh, yeah, that's what I missed, that evil laugh.
Rick, I've been talking to people from lots of different locations in person. And everyone I talk to thinks that things are really bad. They think that we're heading into the Second American Revolution. They really believe that. And, I'll say to them, so what do you think? And they'll say, ammo.
Well, you know my feelings.
I'm buying more ammo.
Yeah, you know my feelings about like Christchurch. What really happened, and why are we not getting the real news? It's like I have no confidence in anything anymore.
Okay, and the question is, why, if there was a bona fide video, why did it need to be deleted? Why did 1.5 million videos need to be deleted from the internet? Why?
There's something going on, and the thing that bothers me the most is that while there is the controlled news media, Fox, CNN, and so on, there is the independence. There's people like you and me that actually are trying to determine what really happened. And I don't see that flurry like I used to, where there was right up in their face challenging them. How dare the media do this to us?
Well, you get sued. You get sued. You get investigated by the federal government. It's a painful process to ferret out and relay what you believe is happening.
Actually standing up and saying what actually happened, and you can't trust
what actually happened
anymore. I'm
Rick. We've got Guineith Isaacs. We can discuss Christchurch, the alleged massacre when we come back. But Guineith Isaacs is with us. Welcome, Guineith.
Hello there, Vincent. How are you this morning?
Very well. You're on with Rick Miller.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning, Rick. How are you today?
My stock response is I'm going bald, and from unnatural causes. What's going on over there in your country and why?
Okay. In New Zealand, I actually did a whole article about this on the Gentleman of Fortune's weekly news this week, and I think Vincent got a copy of that earlier today. So I pretty well jumped up and down about it, didn't I, Vincent? And,
you certainly did. And
if anyone wants to go to subscribe and hear what we're talking about, it's just disgusting. The reportage that's been coming from the mainstream media.
I was watching the Prime Minister in a video that showed a lump between her legs. Was that her carrying a pistol? What exactly? Well, no, I mean, I saw it.
Oh, I don't know. It's disgusting.
It's like, and I mean, that was a valid video, and there was an anomaly, and it's like, I can't trust anything anymore. And now, with the way software is, you can change things where you can't actually prove it.
Yep, that's right.
And so the software has gotten so good that you can confabulate something and you don't know. And the fact that you don't know, and the fact that nobody is actually trying to do the correct job of reporting the news has left me. I don't know what to think anymore. I really don't. And that's why Vincent would suggest end of days. I mean, I used to believe in everything, and now I don't believe in anything anymore. The only thing I believe in is what I sense in my gut, and my gut says none of it. It's a bunch of hooey.
Yep. I would tend to agree with the end of days thing. But the reason why I'm actually calling today is I had something very, very interesting happen to me. When I was having my shower earlier, I don't know if you ever have known of birthmarks suddenly appearing on people's bodies. But I noticed that there was a mark on my body that I had not seen before. Okay, and it was around about, I don't know if you know. Oh gosh, I don't know. It would be around about 3 centimeters across. Okay, and looks like a birthmark. Full on looks like a birthmark, but I had never noticed it before. And it was in my back, onto one side, okay, and looks like a darkened patch of skin, okay. And what I'm thinking that it is actually a past life scar, okay, because I know that in one of my past lives, in the life of Lady Catherine Ferrers, that I was actually shot to death and that I bled to death over a period of hours. And, I have heard, I don't know if you've ever heard of people with past lives having birthmarks where they had fatal injuries in their past life. I know I've heard of it. But to have this mark appear on my body, and it's not painful. It like I say, it looks like a birthmark, but I'd never noticed it before.
You know, I can say something about that right now. That when you find something significant that leaps out at you like that, that is called synchronicity, and that is one of the definitions in physics today. Is that we are going to suggest that that's how a future timeline is trying to communicate to your moment. And there are life forms on this earth that have genetic memory, like the Dalai Lama of past lives, that can be proven with hypnosis and other tools that we now have to access our conscious and unconscious minds. And I'm going to say that because you have found this significant, I would recommend that you diary this immediately, like, take a snapshot in your emotional plane right this moment, and some kind of a hard copy, like written or computer, whatever. And I think that this may be very important to you shortly in the future.
Because what I'm picking up that it is is that it's actually the past life scar of the death wound of Catherine Ferrers, because it looks for all the world like a gunshot wound. It would be probably around of quite a high caliber weapon, okay, and it's likely that the weapon that killed her was a 50 caliber musket or 50 caliber pistol, okay, because she was ambushed and she was shot with a flintlock. But they would have had muskets and they would have had pistols on this ambush, and it's really quite interesting because I've had over the last 20 years a history of liver problems, and the doctors told me that I had scars on my liver, okay? And I did have glandular fever when I was around about 22 or thereabouts. So that could also be an origin for the scars on the liver. But the location of this birthmark, where it is, if she'd been shot there, the bullet would have lodged. There doesn't seem to be any exit wound, which means that the bullet would have lodged in the liver. So I think that that's very, very interesting that I've, and I just thought I would mention that because I know that you have done some past life research, Doc Ram, in the past. It's certainly an area that interests me as well.
I think that something else is going on. I'm not going to contaminate you with my theory, but just be aware that this may not be a past life, but a future life, and that there are other kinds of communications going on besides old memory. And I don't know what it all means yet, but I'm just going to say,
could this be something that is yet to happen in my present life?
Well, see, that's another thought. That's another possibility, not probability, another possibility. And what you need to do, if you don't know, what you're trying to do is make sense of it. And really, it's not about the event or a gunshot wound. It's about the emotions behind it.
Yeah. It was sort of like, wow, I never noticed that before. That looks exactly like a gunshot scar, but it's made of freckles.
Guineith, would you like to hold through the break?
No, I think I'm right, but I just want to plug for people to go and subscribe to Gentlemen of Fortune.
Right. Class, Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us. Mark in Illinois, welcome. You're on with Dr. Richard Allen Miller.
Yeah, hi, good morning. Yeah, this week is the week of Passover, according to the ancient Druids, and who were the first Christians outside of Israel. But there's something I wanted to tell you, Vincent. I talked to you one time about, being aware of, and I talked to you about that time when you seen that plane fly over that. And you knew you were going to get sprayed, and you knew that you should have went in the house, and you should have did something, but you didn't do it, and you wound up getting ill. Well, what I want to tell you is, this is thus saith the Lord, Yahweh, Yesu God, is that what you need to do, and this is what I received in this Passover week here, is that you need to build a fire barrier around your house. And you need to have like 3 exits. Because what I see coming upon the state of Missouri is fire. And I see it coming this year. And it's going to be raging a firestorm. Like tornadoes that are raging with fire. And that's just the word that I want to give to you. This is what I see. I'm not a remote viewer. I don't know about that stuff. I'm a seer, and many times that I have talked with people and told people things, Lord has told me to tell them, to warn them that they have a choice to believe it or not.
I've got a comment. I thought that was something that we should be paying attention to several years ago. And our property has a fire break around the perimeter.
Wow.
A bulldozer bulldozed a fire break so that if the neighboring farm is on fire, it's less likely that our farm will be taken down with it. And as an extra precaution, I bought what's called a track loader, which is like a bulldozer. It is a bulldozer, except instead of just being able to push dirt and trees and objects, it has a big bucket on the front. And that bucket can be used to excavate as well as push things over, just like a bulldozer. So it's a bulldozer with more features, if you will. And that's what we're using to clear an area to further protect the buildings. So I'm with you. I am absolutely with you. And so some people may think that I spent...
excuse me.
Let me just finish this.
I think there's
I spent $3,500 on this bulldozer, which is pennies per pound, literally. It's an old bulldozer, but it's something that I believe that we need. Now, tell me about the 3 exits. What do you mean by 3 exits?
Well, I think you need to have 3 exits. Like you said, you told me that you lived on a hill. I think you need to have 3 exits in different directions because, this is what the Lord has shown me, that you need to build a break that's 50 yards. I know that's probably, that would be extensive amount of break, but we have a fire break.
No, we have that. We have a fire break of 50 yards.
Wow. Okay. See, this lines up then. So yeah, there is large deposits of that Missouri. You see, there were 2 lakes. In ancient times, there were 2 lakes that covered pretty much 2/3 of the state of Missouri, and those lakes disappeared. So there had to be some type of shifting that had to happen in order for those lakes to disappear. Plus, there's also large deposits of gases that are in the state of Missouri, plus, underground bases. It's going to be very dangerous to be there.
So hold that thought, and let's get Dr. Richard Allen Miller's thoughts when we come back. The dangers of living in Missouri. And I've been thinking, should we live in Missouri? So, Rick, Mark in Illinois mentioned that we need a 50-yard buffer, fire break around our buildings, and that we need 3 exits, and it's good that we're on top of the hill, and he expects fire to be coming our way. Any thoughts on that, Rick?
The concern I would have in your location would be the Daiichi-like reactors that are there. I did a show last week with Jeff Rentz, and I thought there were only 21. He said there were 26 nuclear reactors on that fault line right now, and they're all leaking. And there's your fire. And when I say fire, I mean radiation, when it's out of control, burns. And I have a serious concern because of the nuclear reactors. There is a series of different maps on the worst case scenario for your region. The one that the military primarily uses is I forget which one, Chet Snow. They use the Chet Snow one over Scallion, and that one, unfortunately, throws your property underwater. Now, I don't know that that's going to happen, but I do know that the Missouri and the Mississippi are both involved, and no matter what else, there's going to be trouble with your groundwater right out of the gate. And the bad news is when you try to turn those switches off, they don't just, click and it's turned off. It takes as much as a full year to bring a reactor down to silent. And when I say that, I mean it's a process. It isn't something you just go in and do to cover your ass. And that's why Fukushima, now, last week, you and I were talking about Putin scientists and the predicting of the mega USA earthquake that did not happen. But something else is going on because I can't tell you what I'm feeling, but I can feel it in my bones. I can't describe it, but there is a general dread feeling right now. And so what I did was I just made sure that my water was up to snuff this last week. That is the primary first problem everyone's going to hit. The first 50% of people that die will be from dehydration and exhaustion. And your exhaustion is putting up that fire zone. That, for example, is Exhibit A. You right out of the top have a list of we've got to do these and we've got to do those. And right now, I don't see anybody addressing the Daiichi-like reactors, the GE reactors. I don't see anybody talking about that at all in your neck of the woods. And Oregon got rid of ours. We have one up in Washington with Hanford that's still leaking into the Columbia River, and that one down in California. And there it is on the West Coast. We don't have anything like the amount of power plants that you guys have. And so that would be my only first concern right there.
Rick, you mentioned last week the report from Russia about a massive event that was going to happen, an earthquake. Well, and it was going to be on March 20th. On March 20th, there was an article on Zero Hedge, headline, "It's happening. Most dangerous volcano in North America just erupted."
Yeah, I saw that. There it is. But really...
shot ash a mile into the sky.
Yeah. Do you know how many people die if that actually happens? I've been down to Popo. Do you know how many people are going to die in Mexico just when that goes? It's going to be like something.
It's already started.
Yeah.
It's already shot ash a mile in the sky.
That they were predicting. And that part is what drops the shelf. That's what causes Yellowstone to go ballistic and set off the New Madrid fault line.
And the number of people
that map, the Utah doesn't even exist anymore when Yellowstone goes off. And so I don't know what's going to happen. But there was a article indicating that many people, like your friend Guineith, others, that have sensitivity to electromagnetic fields. And there is, I saw NASA talked about that explosion of that asteroid that exploded over Russia, and nobody reported that. The news, you can't depend on anything anymore being accurate or warning. I don't know. I don't know what to say.
There were
25. Excuse me one second.
There were comments that were here during the time of Passover, and they're here again.
Well, Joseph Campbell is the one that said, quote, "When you see the kingdom of the Father on earth, the apocalypse has already occurred. It is perpetual in its potential. It is in the eyes of what you call apocalypse. Everything can be seen in that light. Biblical, all of it. However, there's something else going on, and I can't put my finger on it as a scientist, Putin's predictions are accurate based on technologies I'm quite familiar with. And so I don't really understand yet what actually is happening. And there may be another thing we haven't even mentioned, intervention by something else, the Lord, aliens, whatever. There is all kinds of unrelated connections. And I don't understand yet quite what's going on. I'm trying to take my life day by day and live for the moment, and I feel very blessed to be able to have that kind of solitude in a sense. It's not real, and I have to work at it. But
according to Zero Hedge, it says, quote, a lot of us have been watching the Mount Popo for a long time. Could it be possible that we're now on the verge of the most destructive volcanic eruption in modern history of North America? On Monday night, at precisely 9:38 p.m., a massive explosion at Mount Popo sent a column of volcanic ash nearly a mile into the sky. A yellow alert warning has been issued by the authorities, and they're ordering everyone to stay at least 12 kilometers away from the crater. They're stressing that the threat has not passed, and there is an evacuation plan in case a large eruption follows. And if a much larger eruption does follow, the devastation could be off the charts. Mexico City is only 43 miles away from Mount Popo, and approximately 25 million people live within a 60-mile radius of the crater. That's worth paying attention to.
Yes, it is.
Mark, any other comments?
Yeah, Guineith was talking about past lives, but I was talking to Doc Graham about a couple of weeks ago about the 144,000, and the number 144,000 is called a golden mean. It is a number that's used in all types of engineering. This number 144,000 used in building bridges, building skyscrapers, everything like that as an engineering. But that 144,000 means, if you go to Romans chapter 8, it's talking about the sons of God. And what it means is that we were with the Lord before he created the heavens and the earth. We were immortal. We were beings of light. And we were born here in this world in a human body. So we were subject to sin. But that's why the Lord came to redeem the lost sheep of the house of Israel and the house of Judah and to give us eternal life. But we're going back to what we were in the beginning, when we were beings of light. And we are the 144,000 of the 12 tribes of Israel. So that means we're the ancient ones. We were with God before he created the heavens and the earth. And when there's going to be a resurrection, when this big earthquake happens, it's going to be a resurrection. And there's going to be the marriage supper of the Lamb and the bride of Israel. And so we're going to be taken up, caught up into the air to be with the Lord. And when he comes back to this world to set up his kingdom, the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven, the stone kingdom, we're going to rule and reign with him. But we were once with him in the past. And this is before this world was created, or before this heavens was created. And you can read it in Romans chapter 8.
There's an article on strangesounds.org, headlines, and it all ties together. $1.3 billion in damage in Nebraska from historic Midwest flooding. Meanwhile, Missouri towns ordered to evacuate. Goes on to say that the devastation is unbelievable. The flooding is at the peaks of the roof, not at the base of the roof, but the peaks of the roof. $1.3 billion in damages including $439 million in infrastructure losses, $85 million in private homes and business losses, $400 million in livestock losses, and $440 million in crop losses. This is pretty significant. The Midwest is flooded. It includes Iowa, Nebraska, Wisconsin, and we're going to see less food. Animals have been killed in this. Farmers are losing their shirts. We'll be right back. Doc Graham's with us. Mark in Illinois is with us. Just to continue what we were talking about with this disaster, this flooding, that was reported the same day that the report from Russia said that we were going to have a massive earthquake. Well, we had a massive flood in Iowa, Wisconsin, and Nebraska. In Iowa, 41 out of 99 counties are under state-declared disaster. In Nebraska, 70 out of 99 counties are under emergency declaration. So it's pretty darn serious. There's a farmer who had 700 hogs, all but 14 survived because of the flooding. And it's incumbent upon you, class, to think about where you live, and are you uphill or downhill? Are you in the plains? Is there flooding there already? Has there been flooding? And I can tell you that we selected our farm because we wanted to be high on the hill. We didn't put our house at the bottom of the hill. We put it at the top of the hill. And we've had some massive flooding here before, but our house has stayed dry because it's at the top of the hill. And we're up about, well, over 1,200 feet above sea level. Yeah, so we're not at the top of Mount Everest, but we're high enough that water is running downhill. Now, there's been flooding. During the flood of a couple days ago, we couldn't get home. We literally had difficulty getting home. We had to wait for the water to subside a little bit. There was a lot of rain, and that water runs downhill. And think about this. We have a Dodge 3/4-ton truck. And it's a heavy truck. And I did not want to cross the road because the water was running so fast across the road that I didn't think we would be able to make it without getting swept across the road and downstream. I really didn't think so. It was like whitewater rafting going across our road. So those are things to think about. And back in the 1930s, when there was a lot of flooding and people had to cross the creeks when the water was running very quickly, literally, here's what they did. They opened both doors on both sides of their old cars, and the water would run under the car, and the water would run through the car. And the idea was that if you opened both doors, there'd be less likelihood that you would be washed away because the water would go through the car rather than push
float.
the car.
Yeah, rather than float.
Right. Mark, any other comments you'd like to make?
Well, there is actual fire coming in that I was telling you, actual fire, not from the nuclear power stations, but actual fire that because of the gases that are in that part of your Missouri will be igniting the water on fire too. So it won't just be the forest that will be on fire, it'll be the water be on fire. But I do have a comment about Genesis. If you go to Genesis chapter 1, verse 2, and then you go to Jeremiah chapter 4, and Jeremiah says, verse 23, it says, I looked on the earth, and lo, it was without form and void, and on the heavens, and they had no light. And I looked on the mountains, and lo, they trembled, and all the hills were shattered. If you read these verses, 23, 24, 25, 26, you'll see that there was an extinction level event that happened in the book of Genesis. We've got chapter 1, verse 2. and it was a pre-Adamic civilization. And this event killed all human life upon the earth. And I don't think it's going to happen this time. I know it's not going to happen this time, where all life and all animal life, but it has happened. And the Word of God tells us that it was a nuclear war that happened, and it's going to happen again.
Mark, if you'd like to hold, I'd like to share some information that is kind of interesting. You mentioned gas pockets underground. I'd like to talk a little bit about that when we come back. Would you like to hold?
Yes.
Okay. We're right back with Dr. Richard Alan Miller. RichardAlanMiller.com. Richard, A-L-A-N, Miller.com. Everyone all set, cocked, locked. Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. We talked about the prediction from Russia that was going to happen on the 20th. Massive earthquake. Well, what we got was a massive storm. Mount Popo has erupted. We've had massive flooding in the Midwest. The food supply is reduced. Farms are done for the year, and they haven't planted yet. They're done. They're done for the year. They will not drain in time for planting. Many farms in Nebraska, Iowa, and Wisconsin. Dairies are going out of business at a record rate right now. Right now. Mark, do you have any quick comments before we take our next call?
I just wanted to say in Genesis, if you look at in Genesis chapter 1, verse 2, in Jeremiah, it's talking about an extinction level event that happened in the pre-Adamic civilization. So it's not the first time that the world has seen a nuclear apocalypse, and it won't be the last, because it's coming again. But this time, not all human life and not all animal life and not all plant life will be wiped out. There will be people who will be saved through the Great Tribulation period. And that's all I wanted to say, but during this month of Passover.
Well, Mark, thank you very much for your call. I appreciate you calling in and sharing your information with our class. Right. Bye-bye. Rich Shealy, welcome.
Well, thank you, Vincent Finelli. And how is Dr. Rick Miller doing this morning?
Good morning, Rich. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I really appreciate the invite, Rick. And, you guys are talking about some really interesting topics. And, I'll just chime in on on that context. You know, I read a lot about what happened in Caracas with the blackout. And some people think it's a beta test for a so-called fake, quote, solar storm. And, you know, whether it be solar storms, shooting transformers, cyber attacks, EMPs, I mean, we just have to ask a common sense basic question. Do you think our power grid is safe, legitimate, and hack-proof? And I think most people who do any reading and research will say no.
Yeah, we're extremely vulnerable. You're in a nice location.
Well, Montana in general, not so much northwest Montana, but Montana in general has a lot of nuclear silos. And that obviously has not, who knows how that's going to play out. But it's just as dangerous as the nuclear power plants on everything east of, where there's so many east of the Mississippi River. You know, the East Coast is filled with them. So I think there's, I'm glad you had Dane Wigington on, Vince, because he really connected the dots. All this climate change, global warming, you know, you can say it's man-made, but it's man-made intentionally. Why does Monsanto and all these, Rothschilds and big companies have hundreds of patents on weather manipulation? And I think that's of great concern. And you have to ask ourselves, is a lot of these weather anomalies being done on purpose? And I think with all the geoengineering that's going on and all the, when you listen to firefighters during the summer months, I can't tell you how many firefighters I've listened to and read who have been fighting fires for 30 years. who said they've never seen a fire so hot. So as whether it be the military or commercial airlines or whatever, if they keep dropping all these flammable chemicals on our forests, and then we dovetail that with not managing the forest, leaving all the dead trees and not harvesting timber, it's a disaster waiting to happen. So what do you think about that, guys?
I've got a comment. I asked Dane Wigington. Oh, by the way, Rich, thank you so much for switching from your day, Tuesday, to this Friday to make room for Dane Wigington because his schedule could not change. Thank you for changing your schedule. I really appreciate that.
It's my pleasure. I think Dane Wigington's information is extremely important. The people need to know that weather manipulation is the biggest reason, and of course, cyclic solar activity is the biggest reason for weather changes, and not so-called greenhouse gases and what the little people are doing with their lives. Vince?
Well, I asked Dane Wigington, why is it that these terrorists who are flying these planes, spraying chemicals above our houses, farms, neighborhoods, cities, why they haven't been shot down? Why these terrorists have not been shot down? And he said, it's the military that's doing it. The military is doing the flying. Now, so what do we, the villagers, do? I have an answer. So if you live next to one of these pilots who happens to live off base, who is flying these planes, why not put a sign up on your front lawn that has an arrow pointing to that guy's house that says, a terrorist lives there, and point to his house?
I wonder, Vince, if the pilots are going to claim plausible deniability because they're going to say, oh, they're not doing that. We didn't get that information. But then why are government agencies, especially like NOAA, having gag orders against the American people? Vince?
Yeah. Well, I think that we need to point these people out. I think we need to make them famous. And, you know, just like the guy next door who doesn't want you to have guns to protect yourself, the guys, I mean, I've seen the signs that say, my neighbor doesn't have a gun, and I won't be able to help him if you want to rob his house. I mean, things like that. So I think we need to make famous the people who are trying to hurt us, people who are trying to steal from us, people who are trying to kill the entire planet. They are terrorists at the highest order. Rick Miller, do you have a comment on that?
At this point, I'm going to step down and just say I don't believe any of this. You know, in terms of military. Well, what I'm saying, the chemtrails are absolutely, there was deniability up until recently, and yet there's still no disclosure on what it is and why they're doing it. How does that work?
What are you saying you don't believe? You don't believe any of what?
I don't believe that the military is doing this. I think that there are individuals within the military that are involved, yes. And I have worked enough in the military to know how that works, where the guy involved, you take your order, and that's that. I think that they have a special team. I think that the team was profiled for, what do you call that, being a terrorist right out of the gate, like the guy doesn't give a damn. And I don't know what is really going on, but I can see what's happening to my trees in Oregon. And the trees in my state, they threw the largest cone drop I've ever seen was this year. And there was a 3-year period where the cones didn't drop back in 2012, 2013. It was started then with the so-called drought that we're currently enjoying. And yet our water table is up, and all the trees are dying from the top down. Every single pondy is becoming a widowmaker. Now, and that's in Oregon. I haven't even seen what's happening in Idaho Washington, or I know that I built a log home up in Washington years ago that was a butt-end method, 3-story, using 28-inch Doug fir rounds, and it burnt to the ground last year in the Omak fire.
Wow.
That home, I built that home. It took me a year and a half. It was going to be there for 400 years. It's gone.
Rick, did that home have a smart meter attached to it?
That's the other thing I wanted to talk about. Thank you, Rich. That's why your fires are so hot down like in the Paradise Fire. We have a bunch of people, refugees now, have moved to Grants Pass from Paradise because of what happened down there. And that was a smart meter event. One smart meter went ballistic and fired a microwave beam to the next smart meter, and you had a chain reaction where the fires were so hot as to slag glass. It was not a forest fire. In fact, you can see house itself is burnt to the ground, and all the shrubbery around the house is fine. How's that work? That's your 5G technology being rolled out for America. And there is no 6G. That's another ruse in terms of trying to fake it out. And 5G technology is toxic. That's why we have an atmosphere. That's why we're now losing our insects because of 5G. I have a friend up in Seattle that is doing shungite protection around the beehives that he's doing, and it creates a completely different kind of honey. And the guy said the 5G is messing with the bees in terms of navigation. You can watch it when they get in a field line. The bees all of a sudden do not have the same dance, and his beehives are different just by coating the outer hive with shungite. Now, shungite isn't, that's from Russia, and you can make shungite from a campfire. Anybody can make it. Shungite is a trade name for marketing. But what we're seeing now, I have 5 trees I've had to drop in the last year on my property alone, 5 trees. And there's one huge pondy. It's healthy, except at the very top. And it is not bark beetle. Oh, sudden oak death? I don't know. We have all kinds of excuses going on where the Forest Service they just simply can't manage the fire.
Okay, we'll be right back. Are sprayed along with aluminum in the air. And we've heard that these fires are really, really hot. So strontium and barium react with oxygen in the air to form strontium or barium peroxide. So now we have all 3 that can burn really, really hot. Is that what's happening? It sure sounds like it. Because Rich, you've been talking about these firemen, and I've heard and read and seen the same thing, that the firemen are saying these fires are really, really hot.
Absolutely. And look at the fact that, when we talk about the smart meters, how come all those California neighborhoods, if you look at the pictures, Vince and Rick, how come so many trees right next to the house was unburned, but the house was totally devastated? That tells me there's a very good chance that smart meters did that.
Well, it goes beyond even that. It's the fact is there's still 1,200 people missing. They have not accounted for 1,200 people. And my guess is a normal house fire takes several hours to burn a house to the ground. And these houses were burning to the ground in minutes. And I think there was no warning, and I think that a lot of the missing are found in the ash. And there was no warning, and they're not allowing people to know the true body count. And it's exactly like Christchurch. There's something else going on, premeditated, and they know something they are not disclosing to the public. And the thing that bothers me the most is why is the media not on that like stink on shit?
Well, maybe they're not very smart. Maybe the media is not very smart.
Oh, no. There's individuals there. They're plenty smart enough. They're firing people at Fox every day now on political correctness. It's gotten out of bounds. And I'm almost ready to challenge it personally. It's wrong.
Yep. Well, they're bought and paid for, Rick. When you
Yeah,
say political
I know. It's a paycheck. There it is. It's a sad day to realize that America has been sold out by the media.
Well, think about this, guys. When you're politically correct, if you had to pick three main things of what happens, okay? Basically, manufacturing perception, pity, guilt, ideology, and eliminating truth would be one. Creating cowardice and being afraid of being called a controversial racist, bigot, sexist, misogynist, conspiracy theorist, homophobe, violent, anti-this or ism-ist that. You know, like when they said Candace Owens created the violence, she does everything but create violence. She says diversity should be intellectual diversity, different ideas and solutions for living and being happy. And the third thing is lowering the bars of standards and expectations for getting a job. When you take all three of those, it's made the U.S. very weak. And, you know, they lambast conservative, and that's why they like to do these labels with us. But basically, I don't even like the term conservative. I like the terms freedom, liberty, and the rule of law. But if you were to take a graph, gentlemen, and you were to graph over time, do an X and Y axis, and just graph things like stupidity, cowardice, lowering the bars of standards and expectations for getting a job, and political correctness in general, those four things, you would see that they're like on a train track. When you graph it over time, there are four lines paralleling each other like a train track going up through the sky. And this is why we need to stand up to political correctness. We need to go, ask for truth and demand it. Vince?
Well, I want to talk about barium. I want to tell you that a teaspoon of sugar is about 4.2 grams. And 1 gram of barium would kill you. So the equivalent of 1/4 of a teaspoon of barium would kill you. And they're spraying that as well as other. Plus, I've mentioned in the past, in my opinion, I know how it's going to end. It's all individual stupidity combined with all individual greed. That's going to cause our extinction. We've poisoned our earth in every conceivable way. The water, the air, the ground. And here's just one more example. Elon Musk. In my opinion, Elon Musk is a terrorist. Yeah, you heard that right. He wants SpaceX to provide travel from London to New York in 29 minutes. I want you to think about that. How much energy is it going to cost, use, consume, take in order to provide a rocket to go from London to New York in 29 minutes? Boring holes through our atmosphere. More holes. He thinks that these rockets are going to replace airplane travel, which I think should be reduced. If it's absolutely, positively required that someone flies, okay. But just flying for vacations is nuts. Wasting our oxygen, boring holes in our atmosphere, and Elon Musk wants to go from London to New York, London to Dubai, London to Hong Kong, London to Sydney, New York to Los Angeles, and New York to Shanghai in about 29 to 51 minutes. Why? Now, who would want to do that? The rich, the greedy, the me first, the Menard syndrome people. I deserve it. I deserve to be happy. Those are the people who are destroying our planet. Am I kidding? No, I'll post it on the website, usaprepares.com. It's up and running. It's up and running. I'll post the article and you can see it for yourself. Any comments? Rick Miller.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's the truck behind me in traffic that wants to get there quick. I'm ashamed of what I'm seeing. And yesterday I posted a video from KOMO, Channel 4 in Seattle, on what's happening in Seattle because of the homeless. I grew up in Seattle. I love Seattle. I remember Seattle as it was, not as it is, and it has become a shithole. And when I say that, it's just watch the video. It's unbelievable what's happening. And the solutions...
Rick, you can't use those words.
Okay, I apologize, but that's the word that KOMO used in national news in their reporting. FYI. I was quoting.
Well, okay.
And it goes, look at that.
Describe it. Describe
exactly
I saw the video. Describe it.
The people, 100% of them are on some form of drug. They're addicted. Now, addiction has been shown to be a type of sickness, like the mumps. And addiction is a choice, just like being sick is a choice. And what's happening in Seattle, it's unlivable there. And the people around it, like in Bellevue and Tukwila, live a good life, and then they go into Seattle for their job. And the homeless have crammed under the underpasses. The tents, I've never seen anything like this before. And when they interview the individuals on why, it's depressing. And now I'm beginning to understand, because here in Grants Pass, we have shelter for people that are homeless. But this shelter is male only, because it says in the Bible, blah, 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 in Gospel Rescue Mission. It's been in our media, and I'm watching how a very small town like Grants Pass is starting to move in the way that larger cities are also going. And it is an attitude about crowding, like in high school, in the lunch line. Our schools are no longer teaching these kinds of ethics. I'm noticing a deterioration in just the way law enforcement behaves. Seattle, most of the interviews were interviewing Seattle police that feel hopeless because a dealer is let out of jail 2 hours after being arrested, rather than tried and incarcerated. They, at the end of this wonderful video, they talk about McNeil Island, which used to be a prison. I used to go there and play tennis with the inmates because they didn't have those kinds of access to challenging people. And so I would do my part as a volunteer trying to play tennis or somehow offer a direction. And now they have cures for some of the addictions, and they're implementing those. And it was a very hopeful ending in this news report. And I think that it's time that more people that are reporters care, like this man did at KOMO that made this video. This man cares about Seattle. And he got my heart because I care about Seattle. I can never live there again. And when I had to bury my father, it took me like 2.5, almost 3 hours just to go across town. It was terrible. The traffic. You think our traffic and the me firsters are terrible. This is an exaggeration, and, and I'm watching this on all fronts, including media, and it's a plea to those that would presume to be reporters and trying to do the accurate news to, for the first time, try to do the right thing and report honestly what's going on and how we might have direction for a solution. The chemtrails is abominable. And nobody, not one media person, has actually come out. Dane Wigington has hit brick walls. Nobody is disclosing what's really going on and why. How does that work? Those are our dollars, tax dollars and other kinds of things. They're affecting our health. I remember when I was asked by some friends from the Navy to go into Reedsport. Reedsport is a little town in the northern part of Oregon, up on the coast next to Washington. They deployed lithium. The military told me this. They deployed lithium to see what the effects would be in terms of attempting to lock down a small town in revolt. Everybody was sick from the lithium. It's like a tranquilizer. Everybody was ill from the effects of it. If they're putting this kind of aerosols in the air, you can presume it's going to be just like Christchurch. There's a false flag element to it all. If they're going to do, because it's actually happened, there was a shooting, they raised the body count for agenda. And I think it's time that the public at large stop listening to the radio and my pleas and start to become more active. I can't do it alone, and what I'm seeing is getting worse by the day.
That's why I said people whom I've, in the beginning of this broadcast, people whom I've spoken with say they're buying ammunition. They are expecting an all-out shooting revolution because of the oppression, because of the spying, because of the cameras deployed on every corner, the cameras in every store, the homelessness, the drug abuse, which causes a lot of the homelessness. And when you're talking about Seattle, there were these people who were homeless there was this one guy who took pride in the fact that he has now become a prolific shoplifter. He is a thief, and he loves it, and he knows that nothing's going to happen to him. Nothing. Nothing's going to happen to him because the system is, if the cops arrest him, the court system is just going to let him go.
That is exactly what that report outlined, just exactly what you just said. That was part of, the cops have stopped arresting because why bother? Only less than 7% are gone to court. The other 93% are released.
And these guys have the top 100 people who have been arrested 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 times. And they're still walking around.
In his report, that was exactly in his report. He showed a list. They compiled a list of who's being arrested and what happened. It's unbelievable.
Well, it's not just in Seattle. If I got on a dirt bike, I could easily ride down the road, this dirt road that we live on, make a turn or two or three, and I could go to this property where these, I can't even call them people. They're two-legged, but they have amassed pile after pile after pile of trash on their property. It looks like it is a dump, literally, like a city dump or a county dump, but they don't have a bulldozer to compact and bury this stuff. It's just spreading around. It's horrible, and I don't understand why the neighbors tolerate it. I don't know why. The county's not doing anything about it. Nobody's doing anything about it. And these people are black. But to balance everything out, there's a white family that's doing the same thing down the other way down the road. So it's not a black thing. It's not a white thing. It's just a disgrace. And if I lived near them, they'd have a problem with me. We've got to stop it. We've got to... People would say, Vinny, how you doing? My response lately, I'm angry. Mrs. Finelli used to say to me, you know, when I was work with government clerks, she'd say, well, they're just doing their job. I don't think I have to be nice to them. They are mercenaries. They chose to do that job. They chose to be in my way. They chose to take money to prevent me from being productive. I don't have to be nice to them. Joey in Michigan, welcome.
Hey, good morning, guys. I tried to call a few times, but it's difficult. Rick, quick question. We're talking about addictions, people in Seattle, people all over. Let's talk about brain pattern imaging that took place in the 60s, 70s, 80s. So they've mapped the brains. They have electrical control of brains. Now they can do it through frequencies. And are most of these homeless people an experiment to condition those people to see how they react to this in a small version? And when people decide not to listen and they get a little rambunctious because their fearless leaders can't lead themselves out of the dark, let alone the masses, are we being manipulated? And when all these antennas, the gross amount of antennas with the huge power lines going up the side, 3 and 4 inches. And I'd like for you to ask that friend of yours, Nick Begich, Mr. Angels Don't Play This Harp, about the smaller antennas, because you never hear about the big harp anymore. You just see all this nonsense on every street corner in every community. Go ahead.
There's the concern I have regarding Seattle specifically is that in Kirkland there was a group that set up called gang stalking that stopped the crime of drug dealing on the streets of New York City, not by arresting, but by protocols developed out of Tavistock to create a fear. And they have already been shown to be practicing on the homeless in Seattle. And that's probably one of the reasons why they have allowed the situation in Seattle to deteriorate the way it is, so that they had a proving ground for study on gang stalking protocols. It goes downhill from there. Now, the takeaway of this for the day is, why is the media not on this like stink on shit?
Well, the media, they're loyal to one thing that's called a paycheck. Just like all this cesspool vomit that is controlling our environment, they will not go against their check. The day the check stops...
Yeah, but Fox just got picked up by Walt Disney. Now I want to see a change.
What got picked up by Walt Disney?
Yeah, Fox News just got purchased by Walt Disney.
Now we see how that ends, because that goes into another question I had. I've been watching old television series that you can buy on VHS or a DVD. And it's interesting when you go back in the early 70s, mid-70s, 80s, mid-80s, every time a new implementation, whether it's racial mixing is a good word, SWAT is another good word. When it came out in the late 70s, there was a series called SWAT, and that was your human protector. But they never show you a current SWAT team where they kick in the door, attack an old lady, shoot the neighbor's dog or the homeowner's dog because they hit the wrong house. They don't show that show. And the thing I've noticed on some of the old TV series are the music playing in the background, even coupled with music playing on series I've watched from the BBC in the background. So that tells me there's something going on. And the question I would have, is there a tool, a way to watch a video, VHS and or DVD, slow it down and see if there's any messages installed in the back of those movies? Or are the messages installed in the commercials, or both? Because there was
a TV series called The Prisoner with Patrick McEwen, and that's worth watching again.
It's all conditioning.
That's correct.
Thank you, guys. Be safe. Have a safe and pleasant next week.
Joey, thanks so much for being with us. Rick, as always, thank you for contributing your wealth of knowledge. And you know what's happening? We're ramping up our anger. I'm hearing more and more of it.
Yeah.
With yeah. And it's righteous indignation. Thank you so much, Rick.